Welcome back to the Deadology Podcast from Pencil Hill Studio, New Paltz, New York. I'm your host, Howard Weiner. Today is March 20th, 2024, Season 2, Episode 12 of the podcast. And today we're going to take a look at the Cow Palace 1974 show. It's the 50th anniversary of that historic show is coming up in a few days, so we're going to dig into the Cow Palace. As well as I was preparing my thoughts on solely doing that show for this week's podcast. But about 2 days ago was the anniversary of the Winterland show from March 18th, 1977. And I was thinking, this is such a great show. I got to get this in an episode one time. And I was like, why not pair it up with the Cow Palace show? And the more I thought about it, as I was listening to it, there was incredible similarities. It's a beautiful, beautiful marriage of two shows for the podcast. Here are the similarities. They're both March shows. They're both hometown shows for the Grateful Dead. Winterland's in San Francisco. Cow Palace, Daly City, which is right on the outskirts of San Francisco. Both shows are the third shows of their respective years, 1974 and 1977. And both shows have two never-performed debut performances that they broke out that night, as well as featuring several songs that would be recorded in the studio later in the year and released on Mars Hotel and Terrapin Station. So the shows definitely have similarities and they go well together. So let's jump into this 1974 show, which is most famous for being the first Wall of Sound show in its completed version. So March 24th, 1974 is released as Dick's Picks, Volume 24. That particular volume is missing a couple songs, but a great Dick's Picks selection, no doubt. And for the Grateful Dead, this was more the Kung Pao Palace than the Cow Palace. They were so hot in this place. They only played two shows there. The 74 show was great, and probably even a better show was the New Year's Eve 76 show at the Cow Palace, which was also released officially by the Grateful Dead. I think it was simply titled New Year's Eve 1976 Cow Palace, just something like that. And so without further ado, let's take a look at the Wall of Sound and what happened that night in the Cow Palace. Wall of Sound, nothing like it in the history of music. Another amazing innovation for the Grateful Dead. The Wall of Sound was 3 stories high, 100 feet wide, and weighed 75 tons, with 6 independent sound systems using 11 separate channels. Because each speaker carried just one instrument or vocalist, the sound was exceptionally clear and free of distortion. So the musicians loved it. The Grateful Dead loved playing with the Wall of Sound behind them, and the audience was completely in awe, blown away by it. You don't have to be on anything, just being out there and that enormous Wall of Sound. You look at the pictures of the Wall of Sound, and it's just so massive. The Grateful Dead look like they're ants standing in front of the thing playing, and so the crowd had obviously an amazing audio time taking it in, as well as the visual. Just an incredible one-time Grateful Dead thing. Now, the Wall of Sound only lasted through the end of 1974. As great as an artistic success as the Wall of Sound was, 2 reasons killed it off. It wasn't feasible economically. It cost way too much money to drag around and pay everybody to put that thing together. And, obviously the logistics, moving the Wall of Sound from city to city, going cross country with it, and all the workforce they had to employ. It was a pretty insane thing. It was just one of these crazy things, but the Grateful Dead made it happen, brought it to life, and we're all better for it. 50 years later, the Wall of Sound. And here we go, Cow Palace, March 23rd, 1974. They kicked the show off with U.S. Blues. This is their third version of the reworked U.S. Blues. Obviously, they did it as Wave That Flag in 1973. And we all enjoy those Wave That Flag versions, but the lyrics are much improved. They so hit the spot. They perfected the song, and we're glad forever that U.S. Blues was the one that was released on Mars Hotel. And on this evening, as in most times in 1974, I think they only opened 3 shows with it in 74, U.S. Blues, but it's a State of the Union address, man. Everybody had the U.S. Blues. Just think of where the United States was at that time. They were about to, it was the end of the war in Vietnam. Watergate was coming to an end. Richard Nixon would resign in a few months. So yeah, the U.S. Blues was running rampant, and the Grateful Dead kind of like hit the spot, just the right song at the right time. And the lyrics are timeless. I mean, they carry through the years, but U.S. Blues in 1974 made all the sense in the world. And being them doing 2 shows here, also covering the Winterland 77, I'm going to kind of skip through, not go song to song here, but just basically hit on the most interesting parts of these shows. 4th song of this first set from the Cow Palace, insane, beautiful version of Tennessee Jed. Jerry's picking, just twangy, and really a standout version of Tennessee Jed. Tennessee, there ain't no place I'd rather be. And I will be in Tennessee in 2 weeks. I'm doing a little vacation, going to Nashville and Memphis. And I'm actually going to do the April 1st Deadology podcast from Beale Street in Memphis. I may be on vacation, but the Deadology podcast never rests. So we'll have a podcast that week from Memphis. And show rolls along. Typical good first set rolling along here. And then the 7th song of the first set is the first huge breakout from this show, the debut version of Scarlet Begonias. And let's take a listen. 3:23:74, Cow Palace. The debut of an essential Grateful Dead classic, Scarlet Begonias. And you could just hear the enthusiasm and the kind of awe in Jerry's voice as he's singing it. Like, he loves these lyrics, man, that Hunter gave him. And wow, they made the most of that song, Scarlet Begonias. And it's just such an infectious beat, like if you heard a show, or I remember being at a show and I would hear a new song, it might take me 3 or 4 times to hear it till I really got into the flow of it. But Begonia is just that beat right away. It's infectious. The people at Cow Palace must have been in love, even though they didn't know what the song was yet. So a good start for Begonias. Obviously, it would need a little working, but they really kind of captured the feel. And, Jerry and the band just knew this was a monster song, and they would play it many, many more times. So that's the seventh song of this first set. And on a night like this, I'm just thinking it's so ballsy what they did. You know, they're out there with the complete wall of sound for the first time, and instead of taking it kind of like a conservative, playing songs that they're very confident in, that they've done before, that there'll be no problems, they're breaking out songs and business as usual. The Grateful Dead just pushing the boundaries. That's the way it was back in those days, for sure. And then the ninth song of the first set is another new song. It Must Have Been the Roses. This is the third version. It Must Have Been the Roses, and this one definitely needed some work, man. They a couple things. It's a little too quick, the pace. Jerry's singing is fine on this, but the background vocals suck. They're just, it's terrible. When I listen to this version, I'm like, what the hell is this? But they came back so strong with this. But most of the 1974 versions towards the end of the year, incredible, just the most beautiful, gorgeous things you're ever going to hear. So they definitely whatever they needed to do to fix this. They took a break. They came back. They weren't in the middle of the tour here. The Cow Palace was kind of a wall of sound test of sorts. They played. They started their tour in May, and carried it through June. Did a summer tour, and by that time, It Must Have Been the Roses is absolutely gorgeous. You could hear the great version from the Winterland on the Steal Your Face release. So they definitely got it right very quick. But this was not one of those great versions here at the Cow Palace. So rolling right along. Another huge risk they take, they play the version of Cassidy in the 12th spot. And actually, it's pretty decent. I kind of like this version because it's so much different than what they would come back with. But this is one they threw out there, and they knew it wasn't ready. They needed to rework it a bit. So they didn't even try it again in 1974. They brought it back at the first show. I believe it's the first show of 1976. When they returned from their little touring hiatus, and it was definitely reworked nicely back then. But on this version, one of the interesting things you'll hear the background vocals, and they almost kind of try to do like a Sweet Judy Blue Eyes do kind of thing with the Cassidy background vocals there, and it sounds pretty good, but they never tried to do that again. So it's definitely a unique version to listen to. And once again, the Grateful Dead just putting it out there, man. Hey, we got this great song. Let's give it a shot. Even if it's not ready, man, just throw it out there. And so we're here at the 12th song of this first set. A little ragtag because they're trying things out, this and that. And they're like, okay, let's bring it back to basics. Let's bring in the power hitters, put an end to this, and just blow the crowd away. And one way they could do that is China Cat Rider. And, yep, they kick into a Cat Rider here after Cassidy. And just anytime you say Cat Rider in 1974, it's going to be a great version. There's, just the way they did it from the end of 73 all the way through 74, you can't find an off version. And this one's no exception, rocking out, the great feeling, groovy jam, Rider coming through that massive sound system, just incredible. And, on top of that, the perfect way to end this set, their new masterpiece, Weather Report. The singing's beautiful in the prelude, and definitely some hot jamming during the Let It Grow portion. Nice 20-minute masterpiece on top of the Cat Rider Weather Report to end this set. Freaking brilliant, man. It's the Grateful Dead on top of their game, 1974. So they come out for set 2, and they just open up with maybe one of their all-time masterpieces, a huge song loop, Playin Uncle John's Morning Dew, Uncle John's Playin'. And if I'm not looking at the stats here, I know they played it March 10th, 73, March 17th in the UCLA. There was another performance of it. I think they did this combination 4 times. And I think the UCLA one's the best, but this one here is from the Cow Palace, mind blowing, man. It's incredible. So they go into playing, and they get a mulligan here because they started off wrong. It was a misfire, so they quickly regrouped and started again with the playing, and then they just go off into that playing jam, going towards Uncle John's band, and the 72 playings. Garcia is just shredding like crazy. Those are the best versions. The band's just laced in, going ahead 1,000 miles an hour. Just, there's nothing like a hot playing from 1972. But these 1974, I have such an appreciation for what they were trying to do. They were trying to take their music to a higher level, a higher art form, and they succeeded. These playing Uncle John's just like it's a rich oral tapestry. It doesn't have the pure, crazy shredding of the 72 versions, but just the whole band as one. It's like a masterpiece. It's like they're Picasso's painting on a canvas. It's like that amazing. There's nothing like these playing Uncle John's and coming through the wall of sound nonetheless. So so the playing's really hot. They go into Uncle John's, leading it to the Morning Dew. There's a nice long hot section, and then bam, there you go. It's the Morning Dew. And in 73 and 74, there's just so many great versions of the Morning Dew. Jerry's singing here is just so heartfelt. And so let me play the in-between verse jam for you. It's beyond description what they do with this. Enjoy. Masterpiece Theater in the Kung Pao Palace. 50th anniversary, 50 years ago. Think of just how well this music transcends time. Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash. I'm listening to an audiobook of Johnny Cash, Frank Sinatra. That's another era. This music, for some reason, it pulsates. It just transcends. It's so alive as you hear it today. Incredible stuff there. Jerry Garcia killing it, and just coming right out of the gate with some incredible guitar work. And Lesh, nobody loved the wall of sound more than Phil. You could just hear him like bombing away, and just his playing is incredible. I think he loved it a little too much. When I'm listening to that Uncle John's, he almost sounds like the lead vocalist. He turned his vocals up a bit in the Uncle John's. But besides that, just incredible. So we're almost halfway through this masterpiece segment. And so they're finishing off the Morning Dew. You got the great ending jam. And here's one little issue with the Playin Uncle John's Dew, Uncle John's Playin combination. The Morning Dew, when they're doing that final jam, they got to de-escalate a little bit. So it's not as hot as the very best versions from 73 and 74, because on those versions where they're playing the Dew outside of this combination, they're able to bring it to the major climax, and Jerry sings. I guess it doesn't matter anyway. But here they got to work it back to Uncle John's, so it de-escalates a little bit. But this version, I think this might be the best Morning Dew out of all the ones where they did this combination. Once again, I think the UCLA one has just the best jamming overall. When they come back to that Uncle John's Playin, it's crazy. Fusion fireballs, just brilliant stuff. But here, they go into the Uncle John's reprise pretty quickly. But the way they work from Uncle John's to Playin in Cow Palace, just beautiful, man. Great stuff. And then they rock and sock it home with that Playin in the band. And, this, we talked about some firsts that happened here. The Cassidy, the Scarlet Begonias, all the new songs from the first set. This is the last time they played this Playin Uncle John's Morning Dew, Uncle John's Playin combo. And it would be 10 years, and I think this is the only time they did anything like it afterwards. They did a Uncle John's Drum Space, Uncle John's Playin Morning Dew in Augusta. And one of my previous episodes was on that Augusta show. That was an incredible, once in a lifetime thing, seeing that in Augusta in 1984. But yeah, this was the end of this incredible 3-song swirl masterpiece combination sandwich, man. Job well done once again in the Cow Palace. So the show rolls along. Now, from this point forward, they play a lot of standalone songs. I think they were intent on really testing out the wall sounds, seeing how different things sounded. They didn't go into, usually in a 74 show, this Cow Palace show doesn't rank in the top tier of 74 shows because there's so many great ones. And the reason is, as the second set rolls forward, there's no Truckin', no Eyes, no Other One, no Dark Star. Any one of those songs would have helped, raise the status of this show. But they decided more to go with a bunch of individual songs. Now, here's the good part. All these versions are freaking awesome. I'm listening to it. I'm kind of wishing we had a Truckin' Eyes or something like that. But the Ramble on Rose is incredible. The Birther is a total standout. You'll never hear it, but just the way Jerry plays on that, incredible. So it's a very admirable, desirable kind of set as you roll forward, but you just don't get the big song combination and the improvisation, freeform improvisation, which became standard for 1974 shows. And it wraps up with a Wharf Rat, Sugar Magnolia, Casey Jones, One More Saturday Night, all played very well. The Sugar Mag is not a top shelf one. The 73, 74 is ridiculous on the Sugar Mag. But overall, what a night in the Cow Palace, man. And just a total success for the Wall of Sound. So when they returned to touring in May, everything was full speed ahead, man. The Wall of Sound was great. So 74 was going to so benefit from this test show in the Cow Palace. And of course, they would return to the Cow Palace in 76 for what might be the best show of that year. So Cow Palace, amen. Now we're going to move forward to March 18th, 1977 in the Winterland. So the Grateful Dead played 10 shows in the Winterland in 1977. This was the first one. And so it's the third show of the year. They opened up with 2 outstanding shows, man. That Swing Auditorium, February 26, 77, unbelievable. Might be the best show to ever open up a year. It's that good. And then another great show the following night in Santa Barbara on the 27th. And then there's a little break, and here we are, Winterland Arena on March 18th. And once again, I'm not going to do a song by song, but I'm going to touch on the better highlights of the show. And the first set was a Garcia-dominated highlight reel. So song number 2 is Promised Land opens, and then you get Half Step. Now, they mess up the half step a little bit, the wrong verse, and they only sing 2 verses. It's a little messy at first, but they jam their way out of it. That's the beautiful thing of a year like 1977, when the band can do no wrong. They make a mistake, and they turn the mistake into something brilliant. So there's extra, you get extra jamming because they made a vocal mistake as they're going through half step, and both jams and half step are pretty awesome here. Half step would really reach its 77 peak as they roll into May, man. Those May 77 half steps, incredible. And as the year rolls forth, but they're on their way. The crowd is just blown away by how much better half step got. Now, once again, you take a look at these different years. People love to argue. 72 is my favorite. 74 is my favorite. 77. You have all these debates, and there's no reason to debate, man. It's just these are the prime years. It doesn't matter if 72 is better, 74 is better, 77 is better. In 77, you're getting things that they never did in 74. They never did a half step this good. The 4th song, Sugaree. Obviously, they totally expanded the song. So 77 Sugarees, they're a blessing. They're so much better than they were in the past. This version in the Winterland is a complete outlier. Just a version unlike any other version they played before, they would play after. So the first solo, really hot. The crowd's like, wow, what is this? They're kind of blown away by the power of the Sugaree. Jerry's doing his thing. Second solo, where for a 77 version, you might expect an escalation in the intensity. They kind of hand it over to Keith. I mean, Jerry's doing some stuff, but it's almost like he's like, hey, Keith, you do your thing. This is going to be a unique Sugaree. Like we're gonna do something different here. So Keith is almost like the dominant player in that second solo, and sets the stage for this third solo, which is, I'm going to play it, man, but it's the best understated solo, understated instrumental of any Sugaree I've ever heard. It's incredible what they do here. Just Jerry's playing, Phil's bass, it's almost like a cowboy band, a bluegrass band, except they're on stage, the Grateful Dead in the Winterland. Check this out. Only the Grateful Dead. Could you ever imagine the Beatles or Rolling Stones taking, obviously the Beatles when they did play, taking one of their songs and just doing something like that? It's the Grateful Dead would just come up with these insane musical concepts in a song like Sugaree, which would be the ultimate year for the song, where they would have these blockbuster versions. You get that beautiful, different, distinctive sound in the Winterland on this night. The oompa fills bass and sounds like Jerry's frying chicken on a Sunday morning. Just a crazy, beautiful instrumental there. So the set rolls along. Next Garcia tune from the set, song 6, Peggy-O. And just they did a beautiful job taking Peggy-O up a notch. Another song that really stepped down in 77. There's so many of them. Peggy-O, Half Step, Sugaree, Music Never Stopped. All these songs just really came into prominence and made this such an amazing year in the band's history. There's some cool weird tunes in this set too. You got a Cassidy. Earlier in the set, you got It's All Over Now. But really, the stars of the show here are the Jerry tunes, and the 9th and 10th song of the set, Scarlet Begonias, Fire on the Mountain. And this is the breakout version of Fire on the Mountain. First time they ever played it. I believe there was a Mickey Hart song, Happiness is Drumming, which they did in 76, which was the precursor for Fire on the Mountain. But here it is with the lyrics, and they're actually plugging it in there so that they play Begonias. Pretty good. Donna's scat singing on this is excellent, but they really don't do much of a Scarlet outro, and they go pretty quickly for the Fire transition. The crowd erupts as if they know the song, but I guess that's just Fire on the Mountain, kind of like Scarlet Begonias. As I had earlier talked about the debut Begonias. These songs are just so infectious. The second you hear them, you fall in love. There's nothing like the beat of Fire on the Mountain. It's the simplest chord progression. But man, the Grateful Dead, this is complete magic, Fire on the Mountain, and very cool the way they go into it here. Good version, it's the first one, so it needs a little working. But definitely the crowd was enthralled as they ended the set with Fire on the Mountain. So that the next time they played this was in the Philly Spectrum on April 22nd, the first show of the East Coast tour. And man, by song number 2, they had this down. This Philly Spectrum version is nuts. A great version. I would definitely check that out. That whole Philly Spectrum. I think I'm going to get to that show with one of these episodes as an underrated jam, because of all the 77 shows, if I had to say what is the most underrated, might be that April 22nd Philly show. But such a great Fire on the Mountain, and it's the second time they played it. Hey, but this is the Mother show where they first introduced it, March 18th, 77. Cool thing, 2 nights later in the Winterland, they played the 18th, 19th, and 20th. They played Scarlet Begonias again, but they didn't do Fire. And it was the last time for a long time that they didn't go Scarlet Fire. It was a standalone Scarlet. And one of the best standalone Scarlets you'll ever have. It was like they knew they were saying goodbye to Scarlet Begonias as a standalone song. It ended the first set on March 20th in Winterland. So definitely you want to seek out that version, and really a very cool show altogether, that March 20th Winterland show. So we move forward. Set 2 of a 3/18/77 opens up with Samson and Delilah. And now the songs that are going to be on Terrapin Station come into play. They had played Samson a bunch in 76. It was funky in 76, some unusual sounding versions as compared to the way it would end up. Now we're in 77, and it's straightforward rock and roll, blues and rock and roll, the Reverend Gary Davis number. So Samson is, heading in a new direction, the right direction for it. It sounds great. So a good start to the second set. The fourth song of the set, another Terrapin Station song, would be on the upcoming Terrapin Station, which I think that was released in June. Estimated Profit, and Weir loved this, man. You could just tell the way he would. This was his pride and joy. Like the Grateful Dead thought this would be a hit song, and they just played it with like a lot of bravado and gusto. Cool version. It's got the quick in between verse instrumental. It eventually, like many Dead songs, would just evolve and grow and become more jammed out. But good standalone. Estimated, they were standalone for a while here. The Estimated Profits. And then we go to the fifth song of the set, and this is probably the big highlight of the night, Terrapin Station. So a couple amazing things about this Terrapin Station. A lot of 77 versions, to me, they still sound great, but they're quicker than what you would hear down the road. Coming 78, 79 years, they kind of slowed Terrapin down and made it more epic, it resonated more. They just kind of slowed it down just a tad, and I think it really worked. But this, for some reason, this Winterland version, it's the perfect tempo. They had slowed it down a little bit from the two previous times they would play it, and from future versions. It's perfect. This sounds like, the best version they could play in 79, 80, 81. They just nailed it. Everything is just exactly perfect on this version. Pretty incredible. But it even gets better because after the Terrapin refrain, they go into, I'm not sure what you would call this. It might be the Albrama, or it might be Out of Siding. The Terrapin suite from the album has a bunch of different names and segments, and I just want to say that Terrapin Station from the album is incredible. One of the greatest things that ever came out of Grateful Dead studio work. Every time I hear that on the Grateful Dead channel, I just, stop in my tracks, and it's brilliant. That's got to be I really can't think of anything the Grateful Dead ever did better. Just such an amazing Terrapin Station from that album. But here's the only version they played live, where they played an extra instrumental, which came from the big Terrapin Station suite from the album. This is the only one where after Terrapin refrain, they played some more Terrapin as it was on the album. Since this is a one-shot deal, the only time they ever did it, let's check it out. You won't hear that at any other show. Terrapin Surplus, March 18th, 77, Winterland. And then we head into drums, a quick drum duet, Mickey and Billy, and then into Not Fade Away. And this is a 20-minute version of Not Fade Away. And just in 77, they just crushed this song every single time. This version is interesting because it kind of gets off to a relaxed, which is cool. Kind of fit the feel of the show. It's a relaxed, Not Fade Away for a while. But then, like in the 12 to 15 minute mark, Garcia just goes nuts. It's probably the best jamming of the whole night. But these Not Fade Aways in 77, they just took their time and milked it for all they were worth, and they would always hit a point where there was this great intensity and great playing that made it so worthwhile. And this is definitely one of the top Not Fade Aways. I put a few of the 77 ones ahead of this, but this one you can't go wrong. It's definitely, I'd say top 5 in that 77. The Cornell's great. I think there's one from Tempe in October. Englishtown's incredibly hot. So you really can't go wrong. Any night they play Not Fade Away during this year. And so Not Fade Away, they do the chant at the end. And the song I'm going to mention next, the crowd must have been psyched. Anybody who's listening to a tape would want to hear it next. St. Stephen. Except this happens to be an outlier version because it's not that good. So the first thing that goes wrong with it, they go into St. Stephen, but they don't do the signature intro. So this signature intro almost makes the song. It's like when you hear they break into St. Stephen and you hear that great intro melody, it's just like it's rolling out the red carpet for something major. Except they don't do that. They just kind of jump into the chord progression without that intro lick. So it kind of strips it of its power right away. And the band doesn't even bother doing a jam on it. They just kind of go through the lyrics and the chorus and jump into Around and Around. So obviously they went into it. They realized that it wasn't happening. There was just nothing going on there. There was no momentum, nothing. It was more of a mistake than a performance. And then they hit it, but they're having a great night. They're doing all kinds of crazy things. They're hitting the rock and roll. They're doing all these unique moments in the show. So they turn around from this kind of mistake of a performance and just kill it with a Round and Round to close the set. It's like 11 minutes, and even the ending finale it's off the hook. The whole thing is as good as hot as an Around and Around as you're going to hear. So they bounced right back, and finished up with a Around and Around. So that's a Not Fade Away, St. Stephen, Around and Around, and the encore, a home run, Uncle John's Band. And once again on this night, they're taking their time. It doesn't have that pressure-packed feeling of most 77 shows, which benefited this Uncle John's because it's a really hot jam, and they get into the groove and they play it for all it's worth. So it's a long Uncle John's, unusual for an encore. Excellent performance. So there you go, 2 West Coast gems. Cow Palace, 3/23/74, Winterland, March 18th, 1977. While I'm talking about these 2 shows, I'd like to mention a few books I wrote which have more material on these years and these dates. Deadology, the 33 Essential Dates of Grateful Dead History. March 23rd is one of those 33 essential dates. They played the Keezer 75, Philly Spectrum 86. They did an England show. And there's so much great history on March 23rd that it's one of the 33 essential dates. And also there's Grateful Dead 77, The Rise of Terrapin Nation. I went into every single show and analyzed all the shows and kind of built up to how they got to 1977. And if you love 77, this will put you right into the heart of Terrapin Nation. An incredible year in Grateful Dead history. So those books are available on Amazon. Also my website, tangledupintunes.com, where also it's a good spot to get the podcast, my blog, and also my books are right there lined up like pretty maids in a row. And hey, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed. Next week, I think I'm going to do some later 80s. I got a request for a few different shows from that period. Outside of the Madison Square Garden, September the 18th, 1987, the Miraculous Morning Dew show at Madison Square Garden. I haven't done much late 80s, so I'm going to probably pair a couple of late 80s shows together. Got a few in mind, but I'm going to keep that surprise for next week. But hey, once again, thanks for listening. Peace out.